The world is saved. The living room's dark, save for light being cast from the big TV screen and the imminent sunrise that's teasing the one starry sky with whispers of morning.
Hey, George.
Hey, Lions, how's it going?
Been kind of a crazy holiday season. And so,
Crazy,
okay,
you say?
here's the thing.
Yeah.
I do that a lot, right? Like I pull
Yeah.
a word
Yeah.
out of the title. But seriously, man.
That's from the title of the movie.
That's from The Taxi. I'm not going to go into details, but and possibly folks in the after show may find out, maybe, like some actual crazy crap happened this holiday season. So like, it's frustrating.
Yeah, I didn't know that, probes went that, deep. But,
Yeah. Or that they had that many flanges.
yeah,
It's a lot of flanges for a single probe.
so many. I thought, I always thought that Futurama's probulator was like a work of fiction, but actually that undersells what all went down. It's impressive,
Yeah. I mean, they couldn't draw all the flanges.
It's a terrible strain on the writer's wrists.
I actually got to drop that on someone.
Oh, yeah.
And it kills me that I cannot remember the circumstances. Somebody said something that if you took what they said very literally would imply they thought the thing was being animated live, even though they obviously didn't. But
Right.
if you twisted their words just enough, and I was like, in the back of my, Roger Rabbit brain, I was just like, I'm never going to get closer than this.
Nope.
Like,
This is it.
This is my one and only opportunity to pull this line out.
Your brain went, yeah.
Yeah.
No, I've been there. But what do we play?
We played Crazy Taxi, specifically the Dreamcast port. This was a
I believe
request.
we played Crazy Taxi. Whoa, 90s. Oh, yeah.
Okay, do you know who that voice is supposed to be?
No.
Okay, there was a radio guy from like the 70s or 80s named Wolfman Jack, and that's definitely an impersonation of Wolfman Jack, because I actually have a note in the audiovisual section that says, "Why is Wolfman Jack the narrator?" Just like it's a choice. But you're 100% right. It is in fact Crazy Taxi, the Dreamcast port, 1999, and it's 1999 all over. I think I have a good, because this was an arcade game, right? Sega, big arcade cabinet company. They ported this to the Dreamcast, their final death throes of, hey, we can still make console hardware. And I think I have a decent summary for this game. In a world of immortals where everyone and everything is made out of vibranium, only you can get citizens from whatever random spot on the map they're standing at to Pizza Hut and the Levi's store before they get fed up with your crap driving and jump from a moving vehicle.
Yes, with no regard for their own safety. Because
they're immortals made out of vibranium.
Yeah. No, like I'm not entirely sure how conservation of momentum works in this universe, but
it does not.
Yeah. So actually, tangent right off the cuff, right? I've been creating kind of like a Spelljammer universe, right, in D&D, right? And so the first thing I had to do, obviously, was create a very complex coordinate system to describe the exact location of different stars within this galaxy, right?
I don't know how you could have started without doing that.
Exactly.
It would not have been respectful to your players.
Right. So, I was like, okay, it'll be like, XXX mark YYY mark ZZZ. And the first one would be in radians. The second one would, from the galactic center, right? I did all this. And I was like, yeah, but what about different like possible universes, right? So I was like, okay, well, there's all universes will have like a 3-letter prefix, but each one will be prefixed by a different prefix, which it will be like the first letter will be how different is the mathematics, then the second letter will be how different is the physics, and then the third letter will be how different is the chemistry, right? But
off of like some statistical mean, off of like the central finite curve, like how different from what?
How different from like what we would consider, what the people doing the documenting would consider normative, which would be our universe, right?
Got it.
But but the thing is that as I was just kind of like, and I promise this comes back, is that I was like, is I said like, okay, so what I'm going to do is because a lot of the interesting stuff is like different timelines and stuff, right? So it's like basically all universes are considered AAA universes, which is the math, physics, and chemistry works the same, right? When you start to get outside of AAA universes, then things start to get weird, right? This is not a AAA universe because physics doesn't work the same way, right? You know, like when all of a sudden somebody just jumps from the vehicle and it's just like, all right, I'm fine. It's just like, what? How though? And it's just like, well, you know, science. Like I can't.
Well, there is no speed at which you can strike an object that causes damage to the car or the object, right? Like it's just everything is made. And the thing is, I was playing this game for 30 seconds before I went, oh my God, everything is made out of vibranium. Like,
or alternatively, like everything's made, like I think that you're right, but is that everything's made out of vibranium, so like nothing can dent, or that your car is almost infinitely dense and everything else is not, right? So like these people weigh like 1 kilogram, and that's why when you like run into them, they just immediately like feathers, you know? It's like hitting a car like a feather with your car. It just kind of like flies off to the side unharmed, you know?
Yeah. I mean, whatever it is, it has to be a fundamental feature of the universe, because as we will discuss, everybody seems to be fine with everything that's happening, right? It's the one and only way to make people upset is to not get them to their destination quickly enough. It doesn't matter how much damage you can't cause damage, but like how many people you almost run over, how many things you crash into, like everything's fine. Should we chill before we actually start into this?
We should chill, but I will just say that you know, just to give everybody kind of a heads up, this is no longer a video game review podcast. All we do is just delve into the physics of different video games, and not like game physics, like actual physics. So we've got a bunch of equations.
We picked a hell of
like,
a game to
I've
start
got some slides.
Do you have a slide rule? Do you know how to use a slide rule? You're a scientist.
I don't.
Is that more of an engineering thing?
It is a more of an engineering thing, and B, I think kind of like an abacus. Like, why would you use that anymore? You know,
I feel like the main reason I even know what a slide rule is, aside from like just general history knowledge, is it comes up a lot in disaster movies as like, this old guy scientist still knows, like he can do the calculations because he knows how to use a slide rule, even though the internet is down or whatever.
Right. Yeah, no, I never learned how to use a slide rule. Yeah, same thing with like an abacus where I looked it up once and I was like, I did look up once how to use that one. Oh, neat. And then it didn't retain because I've never used one. But, yeah.
Well, and the whole point of an abacus is to be able to use it quickly. Like knowing how to use it academically is kind of not knowing how to use it.
Yeah, absolutely. But yes, we shall chill.
So if you are ready for your physics test, you can leave us a rating and review on the internets. If you really want to help out, I think the best way is to actually make a recommendation. If you're into this game or some other game, recommend that specific episode to someone, because that's, I think, the best funnel in. If you want to reach out to us or recommend a game for us to play, because we try and focus entirely on audience requests, there's a feedback form on the website. Social media is dead forever. Feedback form on the website. Super easy to fill out. Yes, good for everyone. Sanity is doing a lot better. But yeah, feedback form, website, links in the show notes. Also where you can do like podcast reviews and all that crap. If you really want to go above and beyond, though, you can actually give us money. And I think I told you this, but I just wanted to shout it out because this brings me a lot of joy. I think we now have patrons in 5 global currencies.
Oh, yeah. You mentioned that.
That's so cool, because we just got I think we were at 4, and I think we just moved up to the 5th one in the last like week or two. But it's so cool, especially because I go and look and it's like, here's what they're actually paying you. But then because you are in America, here is what it will be in dollars. I'm just like, ooh, look at all these weird currencies that translate in ways I don't fully understand. And I hope Patreon's not screwing us.
Look at all of these colorful monies. Some of them are green. Some of them are pink. Some of them are blue, but they're all monies.
And they're all, man, America has the crappiest money. Our money's so lazy. Canada and the United Kingdom have way cooler money. And I don't like Asia probably has like 10 times cooler money.
Oh yeah. No, I mean, like if you like flashcards for dead presidents, like it's kind of cool, but you know, Outside of
that's
that,
that's about it, though.
yep.
If you support us at any level, you get the after show, which is more physics lessons, or made up physics lessons sometimes. If you go at a high enough level, though, then we will shout you out. So first, we have to thank our 8-bit classics, Kevin,
An amiable Axel,
John,
a bodacious Beady Joe,
Jason,
a gregarious Gina,
Yarno,
gorgeous Gus,
and Jacob,
driver of the Relaxy Taxi,
and our 16-bit hero, Michael.
driver of the Relaxy Cab.
Which one of those do you like better? Relaxy Taxi, Relaxy Cab?
I like Relaxy Cab.
I think I do
Taxi
too.
Cab, you know?
I think I do too. I get why people would go for the fun, like, double sound, right?
Yeah.
Relaxy Taxi, but yeah, Relaxy Cab is, I think, the better pun.
It is, especially because, like, the way it's just like, I came up with the name. You came up with Relaxy Cab. That's not better. It's not Relaxy Cab. It's Relaxy Cab, like taxi cab. Oh, that is better.
Is that?
So I think
that Friends?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's
World.
Yeah. It is Phoebe and Rachel discussing their new business venture of putting people in a moving vehicle and trying to give them relaxing massages as they go from point A to point B. You know, the winningest of propositions.
Yeah, that's not crazier than this game. Whoa, I just segued us right into audio visuals. Whoa.
Nice. So audio visuals, man, if you took, a grand colloidal mixture of all different decades, right? You could, and then distilled out the 90s, it would distill into this game.
I think it would.
Like,
I think you're right.
You just have like this grand scientific apparatus, and it's just dripping into this one thing, and you're like, and the scientist picks it up, swirls it, and goes, "I believe this is Crazy Taxi." Whoa!
Whoa! I think this is Crazy Taxi. I promise we'll only do that 10, 20 more times tops.
Yep.
Each. I think it's interesting the way aesthetics, music, artwork, clothing, whatever, they kind of bleed, because if you are a person of a certain age, I could very easily imagine someone saying, "Oh, this is so early 2000s." And it's like, yeah, it is, because the early 2000s was really just the late 90s. Just like the early 90s was really just the late 80s, right? And you have that kind of like rolling thing. But for video games specifically, for the soundtrack and for the kind of hardware they were able to make this with, when you turn this on and you immediately get like Offspring, and it's these like super polygon people with like weird polygon bodies and weird polygon hoof hands and stuff, like, that's, how is that not 90s? Like, and it's not bad. I think the soundtrack is great. I think the graphics are super nostalgic, but it's super 90s.
And also too, like, is it just me? This may just be me, but I feel like that 75% of the 90s took place in LA. Am I off on that? And then the other 25% took place in Manhattan, you know?
Yeah, well, pop culture has a really terrible thing about which cities exist and are worth making art about. But because the 90s was a cool decade, I think a lot of cool things were happening in cool cities like LA, right? Like that's where surfers were, and that's where Valley Girls were, and Hollywood.
Well, that's the thing. Is that specifically it's Hollywood, it's on the coast, right? Because that's the thing, is that, you think of the 90s, you think of like, yeah, man, like surfers and, all of that kind of culture, right? And everybody's always wearing, like the cargo shorts, and like the Hawaiian shirts, that are unbuttoned, all of that stuff, right? And I don't know why.
A skateboard they never ride.
Right, exactly, or going to, what are those outdoor gyms? I feel like there's like
like a Muscle Beach?
Yeah. Muscle Beach.
I've actually been to Muscle Beach, and people really use it. Like, there are actually giant dudes like Arnold Schwarzenegger size there pumping iron. It's kind of weird.
As I saw a video one time of a power lifter who got, we watched it together, who got makeup to look like a 80-year-old man, and just like hobbles on and then just deadlifts like 400 pounds. Everybody's like, what is happening? Anyways, I say all that to say that, I don't know why I feel that in the 90s, both the video games and the video games are finally getting good enough to start to like reflect real life. So I just feel that a lot of video games designers just looked out their window and said, well, we're going to do that, you know?
This more of this, please. You know what it is? It's like you got to write what you know. It's that kind of thing. I just realized and this is my fault. We completely skipped like, what is your nostalgia experience for this game?
Do that.
And I'm actually okay bringing it up here, not because I don't have any choice and I'm not going to retcon it back into an earlier part of the show, but because, well, it's that, but because also, this is our first Dreamcast game. And for me, the Dreamcast is not a PS2, right? Like that is its whole place in my mind is not the PS2, right? Like crazy people got a Dreamcast because, you know, you and I have a long running thing that I think most PlayStation and N64 people have about like, oh, but I went to PlayStation because Final Fantasy. Oh, I went to N64 because Super Mario and Legend of Zelda. But those are both opinions that I, as a sane adult, can respect. But the only people I knew who had a Dreamcast, it's because they just could. Like they just had enough money to have all of the things they wanted to have, and then also like put this crazy gamble on the Dreamcast. So to me, this was a thing I played at friends' houses because I don't think I actually ever played this in the arcade. But I did play the Dreamcast one specifically, and that's the one that was requested by our community. And I was kind of blown away by how like good the textures look, because as we have both remarked multiple times, the PS1 kind of grainy, like it's a little grainy, but this looks like really smooth, like almost shockingly so.
No, actually, the game looks pretty good, and just my nostalgia experience for this game is none. But I will give you my nostalgia experience for the Dreamcast, which is because I had an N64, right, and a Sega, and I remember thinking like, oh man, but the Dreamcast, because that had Sonic awesomeness or whatever on it, right? You know, and Sonic was cool, and it was 3D, and everything's better in 3D, right? So I remember.
You're making me realize that eventually someone is going to request Sonic Adventure, and I am nervous for that day.
Because it's Lisa when she gets the braces and smiles like, oh, there is no God.
Yes.
Anyways, but my nostalgia experience is not for this game, but for the Dreamcast, which was my exclusive time I spent playing that, because none of my friends owned it, was playing it in Target.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man, those kiosks.
Yeah. That was my jam, man. You know, parents go into Target, and I would just go and play the Dreamcast and dream of a day when I would own a Dreamcast. And then I think in my mind is I was like, okay, I will eventually buy this, but it's really brand new, and I still got my N64 and all this stuff. And then it just evaporated, you know, just ceased to be. And then I mentally moved on to the next thing. It wasn't until years later and somebody mentioned the Dreamcast, I was like, oh yeah, whatever happened to that, man? You know? So
yeah. It went the way of the Sega Saturn and the Atari Jaguar.
Yeah, where you're like, oh right. Yeah, so no, the game actually does look very, very good. Especially given the speeds that you're moving at. I thought that they did a good job linking the audio and the visual to set a tone, which is to say that it is, you know, you're just slamming into stuff left and right all the time, right? But you still get the visual of the person in the backseat like standing up to yell at you about being a maniac. And I feel that aesthetically drove the kind of the point home of, yeah, I'm a madman. People are not happy with my behavior. And also too, the not only are they standing up, but you can hear them saying, you know, hey buddy, why don't you watch the road? And then when I was playing as Axel, I just all the time he'd be like, yeah, I got it, you know?
Yeah, there's a lot of chit chat happening. There is not a lot of chit chat variety, which is frustrating because like within the universe, I think it actually creates a fantastic effect where because reckless driving is actually not the thing you're being punished for. It's slow driving, right? Things that are slow are like crashing into other cars or crashing into buildings and stuff. But if you like catch air off, because this has like a San Francisco feel in some spots, like these really steep, weird hills in the middle of the city. And if you go like rocketing over one, or if you ramp up like the side of a building and take a shortcut or something, as long as you continue to move at a high rate of speed, they continue to cheer you on. And if you're driving normal-ish, like if you're just kind of going, that's when it gets the most repetitive, because as you are learning the game, you are most likely to be driving normal-ish, right? Trying to figure things out. And like one of the guys, he's like kind of a bigger dude, and he has kind of like the sort of voice, and he just goes like, turn left here. Okay, turn left here. Okay, turn left here. And you respond in, I think, literally one or two ways, which is like, okay. So you just, it incentivizes like drive more recklessly, so you get some variety in the voice lines. But I like their inclusion, and I think they give you useful feedback. There's just not nearly enough variety.
Yeah, it definitely could have used, a ton more. I'm sure that, they were, running out of money. But I say all of that though to say that, I think that just imagine, because the game's Crazy Taxi, right? And I think that a lot of the visuals and audio are in service of that, because just imagine how weird it would sound if that wasn't in there. If people just, right? Like, it would be weird.
Yeah, if they were dead silent.
Yeah, like they just got into your car. Yeah, they just got into your car, and then you're driving and all over the place, and they're just calmly eating saltines in the back, like that. It would create a ludonarrative dissonance, right? Because it's like, I am driving like a maniac, and somehow everyone in the universe is okay with it. So when you run into people, even though it does not immediately pink mist them against the front of your car, right? They are upset with you. They're like, whoa, hey, what are you doing? And you're like, man, this is crazy, But like, yeah. So one of the other things that I did like is that there was never any hesitation in my mind of where my next fare was, like in the sense of, it's got a big giant icon swirling above their head, and there's always
color coded
based off of distance, and there's a million of them, so like, it's not, once you drop the person off, you just turn for your next quarry and then just go. It wasn't, at no point did I get frustrated to where I'm like, I'm losing time. Where's my next passenger? The challenge in the game is once you've identified the passenger, getting to them can sometimes be a little bit of a challenge. But that's kind of
they do at like maybe restaurants, or Pizza Hut, or some like large destinations. Sometimes you will drop someone off and then someone immediately gets in, right? Because you lose control during that like get in, get out animation. You can't like screw that up and drive off Grand Theft Auto style. So that's it's not only is the visual super clear, but they have like a special camera swoop when someone is getting into the car. So like the camera like pans over to them. So you like see them like run over and hop over, because every taxi is a convertible, right? So they jump over the back door and to like get into the back seat. And it's nice to know if you're in the rear camera view, I'm driving. And if not, like something must be happening, because that's the only other time you're in a different camera view.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. And that was the other thing, is that it will, so the camera is directly behind you, but I kind of touch more on that in the gameplay, because that matters. One of the other things I really appreciate for the visuals of this game is that the arrow, there's an arrow above you that points to where you need to go, right? I was literally just at work the other day trying to explain to somebody how to create a standard work document. I was like, you need to be very, very careful with your visuals, like the visual aids that you pick in and all this sort of stuff. And I said, do you play any video games? And they were like, no, I play Mario Kart. And I said, sure. I pulled up Mario Kart and I said, look at your HUD. Now look at where they placed everything, right? And I said, most specifically, where are your eyes 90% of the time? And they pointed to the driver. And I was like, that's right. And now what's the closest thing on your HUD to the driver? And they were like, the items. I'm like, because that's the thing you need to know, right? So that area, if you're in a driving game, the area directly above dead center, that's the best, that's prime real estate. What did they put there? the arrow that says where to go, right? So you're never like looking at a map and saying, turn left at LA Boulevard. It's never that. You're just going. So not only is that a great place to put that visual, but that is it tells you the route. It's not a compass, which is really nice, So it doesn't say, as the crow flies, go here. It says like, okay, turn here, and I know this because there's one place where there's like a hairpin turn, and it will guide you around that turn as opposed to just being like, no, now go this way. As you'll drive and they'll say like, yeah, turn around.
Yeah, I will not go too deep into this because this is more gameplay, but sometimes it fails over to being a compass, and when it does, that you feel lost, right? Because you're like, I had a GPS, right? I had Google Maps giving me turn by turn, and now you're just telling me which way north is, and that's way less helpful. But you're right, when it is operating, which to be fair, it operates correctly the vast majority of the time. And when it is operating correctly, it would be virtually impossible not to see it, because not only is it a giant green arrow, but it kind of like swoops and turns and like elongates and collapses. So it is a really clear indicator, which to me says finding your way there is not what is going to be challenging about this, right? It's getting there as quickly as possible, because there are lots of secret shortcuts and stuff. So as you became better, you would start to maybe kind of ignore the arrow sometimes. But that's for an advanced player. For an entry-level player, the HUD gives you everything you need to get started. And the number one thing you need besides like, where am I going, literally driving to, is where do I need to get to? And the arrow handles all that.
So I'm just going to throw this out there and we can kind of touch on it or not later, but is this a good Superman game?
Oh, no.
Because you have
it apparently runs on a similar engine.
Because you don't have health or hit points. The goal of the game isn't to find where you're going. You have all of the information and all of the abilities to do it is to get there as quickly as possible while ostensibly running into as few things as possible. In this case, not because you're a good person, but because it slows you down,
Yeah. Well, it slows you down from saving the person you're trying to save.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, like, this is
crap.
Is this a better Superman game than Superman 64? I mean, definitely, because,
yeah,
like a dog turd is, but, I mean, I'm just saying.
Yeah, nope, ship it. That idea requires no further refinement.
Love it. Love everything about it. Okay, so next time somebody says, man, it'd be great if they made a good Superman game, we could say they did actually. Have you ever played Crazy Taxi?
Well, I think specifically if they're like, oh man, Superman 64, and it's like, oh, but did you play version 2 on the Dreamcast?
It's got a bit of a different paint on it, but it works. Yeah. So do you have anything else for visuals?
I do want to give a specific thumbs up to what I assume was a very intentional decision on Sega's part, which is no matter how much nonsense is going on, and there's a lot of nonsense, right? Because you can turn the amount of traffic up and down, you can turn the amount of time you have up and down, which makes you make increasingly reckless decisions. But there's a lot of other cars, there's a lot of buildings, there's crap flying around at 1,000,000 miles an hour, and yet I didn't experience a single slowdown. I didn't experience a single like weird frame skip or jump or screen tearing or anything. Like, I have played modern AAA games that were not this buttery smooth. And for a game that the entire point is drive a crazy taxi, right? Like, that's, I think, a thing that's easy to overlook, and like not even, it's electricity, it's plumbing, it's sewers, right? Like, you're like, well, of course it plays really smooth. It's like, no, dude, you don't understand. Not once in all the time did it have a single slowdown or frame skip. That's hard with 3D graphics early in 3D's life, and when there's so much crap popping in and out of reality. Because if you are driving really fast and a bunch of cars are going the other way down the street, how long do they keep those cars in memory in case you do a crazy drift and turn around and now they're in front of you again? Now they need to be rendered to the screen again, right? So like, there's some fairly sophisticated programming and chicanery going to make the world feel like you can move through it at Superman speeds without things popping in and out of existence constantly. So I just like, I don't know how big of an impact that has on the actual gameplay experience, but once I noticed it, I was like, yeah, god damn it, like locked at 60 frames. Like this is yes, because anything less now I would feel pissy about.
Yeah, I wonder what types of magic they're kind of doing behind the scenes or under the hood to make that possible. Because it wasn't. I mean, I know the Dreamcast was powerful for the time, but it wasn't earth shattering. So
It's probably a culmination of a bunch of small choices, like little optimizations. Because nothing is destructible, like every object is just probably a single rendered object that just moves and like glides along. Like it doesn't need, the wheels probably don't spin. Like if you looked carefully, their wheels probably are not rotating, right? So it's not, oh, we have to animate the wheels and we have to animate the thing. It's like, nope, this is just a cardboard cutout of a car that is drifting along the highway.
Yeah, because you're going by it at 1,000,000 miles an hour, so you're probably not scrutinizing it.
Exactly, right. You can't see the drivers through the windows, right? Everything has that like cardboard window look. But it's fine. Like it doesn't need to. You don't need. It's not like Grand Theft Auto where you have to be able to get in and out of the cars and see the people through the windows. Does that car have one person in it or four people in it? Like, are they about to jump out with the Uzis? Like, you don't need any of that data, so you can find a million little optimizations, which then create this again just ridiculously butter smooth gameplay. Where I was like, huh. You would not expect this like kind of silly arcade game for them to have been like, nah, dude, it's got to be locked at 60 frames per second. No screen tearing, no crap popping in and out. And it's like, oh, a lot of AAA games don't get that much love. And it's like, yeah, but Crazy Taxi will.
And the kind of the last thing that I'll say in visuals that leads me into a note in mechanics that to piggyback off of that is that the only place where I saw the visuals get a little crazy, but it I don't know, it worked for me was if I was going full speed and I ran into a wall and I like needed to right myself, clear there was something going on. I'll come back to that in a second, but like the taxi would just jump all over the place because it was trying to like get back onto the street.
Collision detection at high speeds sometimes creates crazy results.
Yeah, which to me was like in videos sometimes. I feel like there's a particular movie that popularized this, but where it shows like the person screaming, but it overlaps, them moving their head around 50 times. That's what it felt like. It felt like my taxi was screaming where it's like, I don't know what to do. So
that's why you need the bright colors and the friendly music, because if you had like drab gray and horror music, then that would look like a woman screaming in a horror movie.
But I say that to say that there is some kind of a writing mechanic, and you may know more about this than I do, but I never got 100 when I was driving a person. Now, when I was stopped, sometimes I would get stopped dead against a wall and I'd put it into reverse, back up a little bit, and then right myself. But when I was going 1,000,000 miles an hour, I could hit a wall at 90 degrees and somehow the game would kind of nudge me back off of that wall, So I guess the amount of momentum that I was carrying, like when the unstoppable force hit the immovable object and I did stop, I somehow still magically had momentum. And I think that that's what's happening is that your momentum does when your speed drops to zero, your momentum doesn't immediately drop to zero. It's what it feels like anyways.
Yeah. What I would guess is probably happening is if you somehow, because I mean, it is a 3D world, right? So the odds that you ever hit something at a perfect right angle are not amazing, because there's a lot of angles that are not a perfect right angle and there's only one that is.
Except for me, I'll only do perfect right angles
with my slide rule. So if you do crash into something at a perfect right angle or very nearly a perfect right angle, I would not be surprised if there's code that's like, okay, but when you bounce off, you don't bounce straight back. You bounce at an angle that is impossible. It's not an Isaac Newton 3 laws of physics kind of thing. Like you bounce back at an angle that if you just continue to floor the gas, you will work yourself off of the wall, because that is, if you're going to fudge physics, you need to fudge physics in a way that makes sense for what players are likely to do in your game. And what players are likely to do in an arcade game called Crazy Taxi is drive at full speed with no regard for anything. So that means when you collide with something, you need to get back to moving in the direction you are trying to go as quickly as possible. This is also, I think, visible when you strike another vehicle, because when it's funny, right? Like this whole world is ruled over by Roger Rabbit. When it's funny, every other car weighs nothing and your car has infinite mass, because you will crash into them and they will just go flying like they're made out of cardboard, right? So, but if you're going at a low speed, that it doesn't work like that. So their physics change to suit the situation, and it's funnier if they go flying when you're doing 150 miles an hour. But if you're going 10 miles an hour, you just kind of nudge them and they're like, oh, hey, right? So there's the physics sort of change to suit the ideal for that situation.
You know what also wouldn't, because I think that the way that, so my guess is two things. One is that the way that they're carrying momentum in the game, again, defies all physics. They can do whatever they want, right? But that basically your momentum is not conserved, right? Which is to say that, when you hit another car, the amount of momentum that you transfer to them does not deplete your momentum by a similar amount, right?
No, you create energy from nothing.
Correct, right. I saw a great XKCD comic where, because there was the nuclear fusion thing where they generated more energy than they put into it. It just showed the person like with a presentation for a hydroelectric dam. And they said, we have finally perfected our hydroelectric dam with a Q greater than 1, which is to say that we created more water than we put into it. Yay!
I don't remember seeing that one. That's a good one.
Right? I saw that and I was like, ha! And then I turned to Megan and I said, hey, honey. And no, don't.
Never mind.
It's fine. I saw funny. I say all that to say, so I think that that's part of it. And also, I think that I saw this, but I don't know if my brain's, Roger Rabbiting itself, where it's like, no, you definitely saw this. It's like, because I wanted to, is if the car is rectangle shaped, but the car's hitbox is boat shaped, to where it's like the hitbox is like rounded on the sides. So it'll kind of clip through the headlights, but you're not really going to notice that. But that would give you a nice smooth kind of edging off of the wall,
See, that would be another thing that if they were very clever, that they might do at higher speeds. So like if you imagine a box, as the box accelerates, it becomes boat shaped, right?
Right.
So like the ends like pinch in, because that would be mathematically, that would be a way to make the system give the player the results they want, right? Which is at slow speeds, when you can obviously see that your giant Cadillac convertible has clipped the edge of a building, you expect to hit the building, right? If you saw the car, slide through the building, that would look weird. If you're going 1,000 miles an hour, what you want is that like, whoa, we almost hit that building feeling, even when the game is like, no, buddy, you did hit that building.
You're a trace. I almost lost it. You did lose it. It's
yes.
We almost hit that building. You did hit that building. Like Kratos is in the back seat. It's like, whoa, dude, we almost hit that building. And you just see Kratos brooding. You did hit that building.
Yeah, but I think the salient takeaway from what you're saying and what I'm speculating on is whether or not that's actually happening. It's how you felt, right? You felt like at high speeds, you were like, whoa, like I must have teleported right through that building. And it's like, maybe you did. Maybe it just felt like you did. But the end result is still, you felt like something cool happened.
Right. I think that this game is definitionally just whenever they said, well, what do the rules say? And everybody just goes, rule of cool, man. Rule of cool. Overwrites everything, which is great, because the game, you want to feel like in the 90s movie where they go under the overpass and it rips the top off the car, and then both characters look at each other and go, whoa, that was close. That's the whole feeling of the game. So anytime when you're like, oh no, I actually died, it's like, well, that's not fun.
Yeah. Well, and that's, as far as I can tell, your car cannot be turned upside down, right? You can't run out of fuel, right? You can't, because this game, and I didn't say this in my very clever and funny summary, but the game is a score chaser. That's it, right? There's the crazy box mode, which is really just there to teach you some of the mechanics, but the arcade game and what they ported to the Dreamcast is make as many dollars as you can. So you either have a fixed time limit where you're trying to make as much money as you can in that time limit, or you extend the time, I guess maybe indefinitely, by continuing to get people to their destination in less time than the reward. So if you're rewarded with 20 seconds, but you got them there in 19, then you could presumably just kind of go on forever. So that's like, everything is centered around helping you be successful at that goal, as opposed to standing in the way of you being successful at that goal. Like, the world really wants you to win. There's you said it before, right? There's people everywhere. There's a million. Finding a fare is never an obstacle because that's not crazy, right? Like, that's saying like, oh, I drove around the block for hours and nobody called for a cab is not crazy. The people, like we mentioned it in the audio video or the audio visuals, is like they have their little dialogue lines, but like if you catch air, they like cheer you on, right? If you crash into things, they're like, whoa, don't do that, which is all little bits of feedback for like things that are good, right? And up to and including if you do certain kinds of tricks, they just tip you. Like, you just make more money. So you are directly, because it's a score chaser game, you are directly incentivized to drive crazier because they will pay you for the privilege.
Which is a great exemplar of a game not optimizing the fun out of it, right? Which is to say that they were very careful with the best way to play the game is the most fun way to play the game, you know? So again, you know, like you said, like you get bonus money for passing cars or near misses, I think. I mean, which those two things are pretty synonymous, you know? but yeah, I mean, so your you know, ward, I guess, your payer, is you know, saying like, yeah, man, great, you passed 5 things, and you'll slam into something and they're like, oh, don't do that. Not because you created terrible property damage, but because you slowed down a little bit and they want to get to their place on time. So yeah, no. And then on top of that, the places to drop people off are like, you know, you could drive a truck through it, right? They're big areas, which is good because again, it's not like at no point did I pass the area where I was supposed to drop somebody off and then, you know, put it into reverse and then back it up and nope, went too far and put it back into drive, you know, that wouldn't be crazy. There were times when I overshot it, but I was like, I had a lot of room to do that. Actually, I saw a meme recently where somebody said like, hey, you know, always shoot for the moon, because if you miss, the moon's 3,000 kilometers wide and you could not have this up more. You know?
That actually, it's funny because I also heard a paraprostokian on that like shoot for the moon thing recently for the first time, which was shoot for the moon and keep shooting. The moon must be stopped.
But yeah, so anyways, I say that to say that, you know, when I did miss this, is I was like, no, that was on me, you know, like
yeah, the game gave me the tools to be successful.
I saw the green and I was like, I got to get there faster. And I hit the brakes while I was in the air flying towards the green. So yeah, that one's on me, Morty.
I'm pretty sure if I ever caught air in a real car in real life, I would be too busy shitting myself to do anything else. But I have noticed that it is virtually impossible to resist the urge to press the brakes in a driving game when you hit the air. And it's like, it's my version of, you probably had friends or maybe relatives who like leaned when they played Mario Kart, you know, they're like, right. Like somebody leans when they're bowling or whatever. Like pressing the brakes when the car is in the air is my version of leaning. It's like, this can't possibly be helping, but I'm not ever going to stop doing it.
No, when we were kids, we actually drove over, like they had these big giant speed bumps, you know, like in this long road that eventually led to a very sharp turn, which is probably why the speed bumps were there. And
this sounds like a story that at 20 you would have told very differently than you're going to now tell in your late 30s.
No, I mean, when I was 17 and, you know, taking my 85 or 89 Ford Bronco that was worth $200 at breakneck speeds over these bumps with the back seat down and my friends wrestling in the back without seatbelts, that was the coolest thing ever. And now I'm like, I don't know what my purpose is, but I have to have one because I should not have survived that. I say all that to say that Yeah, it's disarming when your car starts to come up off the ground. But yeah, no. So anyways, I say that to say that again, they maximize the fun into their game. They said like, hey, how can we make this as easy on the player as possible while still providing some type of challenge? So, I mean, even with like the fares that you go pick up, like they have the circle. If even a molecule of your tail light is in that circle, they come running for you, right? So, again, the only times when I was like, no, I missed that person, it's like, well, I didn't miss the person, I hit them, and then that knocked them out of their circle range. So again, very, very well done.
What would you call that? Player generous instead of player hostile, player friendly.
Yeah. But right? Like, yeah. Well, if it's like player hostile, player neutral, player friendly, player generous, player making it rain, like they just.
I like that our scale has more positivity than negativity. That's nice.
Man. You gotta keep it positive.
So let me ask you about the controls, because this was originally an arcade game, and
it was an arcade game. They have like a wheel.
Yeah, like a sit down and drive arcade game.
This feels like that type of arcade game. That's exciting,
right? Because yes, like obviously, because the gear shifter, big steering wheel, the brake pedal, you probably don't often interact with, but I personally struggled with the controls for the first good like hour or two I put into this game, because I was thinking about it like a driving game, and I don't think that's actually the right way to think about it. So tell me, like, did you struggle at all? Did you just feel like, oh no, it's obvious how you do this?
Because it's not a driving game, it's a Superman game, and you're flying.
Yeah. I mean, kind of, yes.
No, I didn't really struggle too much with it, because I'm, good at video games. But no, the thing that I really did struggle with, that honestly took me a minute, was that drive and reverse are not the same button, Yeah.
That
right, one took me a minute.
Kind of like if you had the physical shifter, they would be in two different places.
Yes. But yeah, I was just, because I'd be in drive and I'd be like, okay, now reverse. Okay, maybe that's not the reverse. Oh, okay. X puts it into reverse. Got it. All right. That makes sense. Okay. Now drive. And I'd be like, no, maybe I was wrong. It was circle. Okay. I thought it was circle the first time. Whatever. And it wasn't until I'm like, no, it's the one for the other. But that outside of that, I mean, pretty much I just treat it as, drive as fast as humanly possible. And it did take me a little bit of time to like remember where the brake was. I would forget where that was from time to time, which is helpful to have the brake. But yeah, no, I felt it was somewhat intuitive.
Did you mess with the Crazy Box mode at all?
No, I mostly played in the arcade and what's the other version? It was arcade and
original, which is,
I thought it was original, but that didn't feel right because it was an arcade cabinet.
Right. I actually had a discussion about this with someone in chat when I was playing on stream, because it's just like, how do companies keep messing this up when they do their arcade ports? Like, is this really that complicated? So anyway, the reason I ask about it is because there is, and this is what I think is actually the biggest sign that this game had real like game designers behind it, is, to me, this game is like chess, which is pretty easy to learn the basic rules, but then there is this absolute massive amount of depth. So if you go to the Crazy Box mode, and I don't think they did this in the arcade. I compared Crazy Taxi to chess.
Yeah, they're like 5 grandmasters who are just like, nope, unsubscribe.
I think chess is just a great example of like, the rules are not that complicated, but that's not the complicated part about chess.
No, I like that, because the next time I'm sitting down and somebody says, I've never been very good at chess, I'm going to say like, well, have you ever played Crazy Taxi? Because those
kind of like that. Thematically, it is a lot like that.
Sorry, continue.
But okay, so the arcade cabinet probably did not have the Crazy Box, right? Because the Crazy Box is here's a little sandbox of challenges where you can learn how these specific game mechanics work, right? Arcade games tend to not do stuff like that because they want your money, and no one would pay to do those little challenges. They would have to find some way to like gamify them. Whereas here, they're very tutorial and they're optional, right?
They need to, they want you to pay money to learn how to play the game on the fly.
Right. And the thing about arcade games that I've become increasingly fascinated with the social aspect of games the more we've done Nostalgia Goggles, because all of the stuff that's in the crazy box, your friend would tell you in the arcade, right? Or you would see somebody do something while you're waiting for your turn and you would go, "Hey, how did you do that?" Right? And like I've actually really come to be fascinated by that whole like meta layer of video games, and like what the internet did to like, oh, there's a Mewtwo under the truck in the Game Boy Pokemon, right? Like that kind of stuff is just super interesting to me. You can't bank on that in a single player game. And so when they ported this, they probably added in that crazy box mode, which teaches you how to do the crazy dash and the crazy drift and the crazy stop and all these other like little things. And it gives you all these dumb challenges to practice them in. All of those skills, throw them straight in the garbage. You don't need to know any of them to play the game.
Yes, I was aware that those existed, but I never even really tried to master them. I was just like, I'm having fun playing it without them.
Yes, and that's the thing, is you don't need them to have fun, right? And this is where the difference between a game like this and the analogy to chess completely falls apart, because if you are playing this game and you suck at it, you could still have an amazing time. If you are playing chess against a competent player and you suck, you probably won't have an amazing time, right? So, I mean, maybe if you're into that sort of thing, but I was struggling with the controls when I was trying to execute the crazy combos, because the crazy combos, at least in my mind, do not make sense from a driving perspective. Because like to do the crazy dash, you have to hit the accelerator, let off the accelerator, hit drive, and then hit the accelerator. So it's kind of like a pop-up sort of, like, because it's a shoulder button and a face button. You have to like alternate between them. And you can do it if you are at a dead stop or if you are going at your maximum speed, but not like the middle speeds, because the idea is somebody jumps in the back of your cab and then you crazy dash to immediately get up to like nearly your highest speed, right? And then when you're at your highest speed on a straightaway, you can crazy dash again to limit break and go like even faster than your maximum speed. And if you are score chasing, those kinds of techniques are required to get the highest possible scores, right? Faster turns, faster stops, fast. So
yeah, more crazy.
Yeah, you have to master those skills. The thing that I was struggling with though is I was having fun just faffing around, and then I was like, oh, I'm going to try and learn some of these skills, because that's like how you get into deeper parts of the gameplay. And I near broke my damn hand because the in-game instructions suck ass. They're so bad. And then someone in our Discord was like, oh, hey, here's like a clearer instruction of how to actually press the buttons. And once I stopped thinking like, oh, I'm shifting gears and I'm pressing the accelerator and I'm pressing the brake or I'm steering the car, I was like, this is a Hadouken. Like I'm doing things to the controller that will then make the car go faster. Then I got it and I was fine.
Nice.
But I can't imagine that's a problem in the arcade, right? Because you have physical driving controls. You have to think of them as physical driving controls.
Right. Yeah, no, and like I said, like I enjoyed just kind of faffing around, again, I think that would ultimately limit my time on it. Like I would peter out faster than you, because you have this skill based thing that you can now do. For me, it's just once the novelty of it's crazy wore off, I would be kind of like, all right, that was fun. I say that to say that I do also feel that this game really benefits from like playing with somebody else in the room, because I think that the most fun about this thing is doing a horrifying or crazy or ridiculous thing, and then not only you enjoying it, but the person beside you enjoying it as well. Because at one point, I don't know how exactly I did it, but I made a wrong turn in Albuquerque and I was just driving on roofs, and
yes, because there's shortcuts.
Yeah, and so I was just kind of like, I went from roof, I turned, and as I was like kind of about to go into the air, I'm like, there's no way I can do this. And I was on a roof, and I drove onto the awnings of another roof and just kept going, and then landed. And I was like, that was awesome. Nobody cares. Like I'm the only person playing this, But again, if we were playing together, or you're playing with a group of friends, right? That would be fun. Or I could imagine like at a college party where it's the apparently like the Mario drinking game rules, which is no drunk driving, which is to say you are only allowed to drink while you're at a stop,
Right.
Be like
right,
that like stuff like that, where it just be like the, oh man, like you gotta go. And then it's like, dude, I'm working on it. Like that type of feedback loop, I think is really critical for this game. To your point, the social aspect.
Well, and the social aspect, I think, provides a like the cheese around the medicine for people who don't care about score chasing, because mechanically this is a pure arcade game, right? There is nothing to do but get a higher score. And this game actually had several sequels. I think there's Crazy Taxi 2 and 3, and then I think there's also like a Game Boy Advance port or something. So
Really?
they wrung a lot of blood out of this turnip. But I don't know about the later games, but at least in the first one that we played, there's nothing else, right? There's no explorer mode. There's no the crazy box is like very limited. I think there's like 9 things, and they're all just there to teach you these mechanics. And if you went back to them, it would be to try to do them faster or get a better score while you're doing them or whatever. So it's score chasing all the way down. But it's really easy to imagine, siblings or friends that live near each other, or, like college roommates or whatever, playing this game and never score chasing because they just have a fun time watching each other drive around. So they never get into all of the crazier mechanics, or they get into them in like a more shallow way. And they don't really care how much money they're making, because what's amazing is, you're standing in the kitchen and your roommate is playing and you could see the TV, and they just go flying over a building when you expected them to crash into a building, but they just ramped so high and you're just like, whoa, that was crazy. Right. And it's like, yeah, but you only delivered one passenger. Who cares? That's not how we're choosing to engage with this. But if you don't score chase and you don't have a player 2 essentially to enjoy the game with, then I think you're right. Like the novelty would that veneer comes off way faster.
Yeah. One of the other things that I believe my gut is telling me is a thing, but I don't think that they really did a good enough job telegraphing is there are different people and different taxis. Like, you can pick as the player character, but they don't tell you what the differences are other than cosmetic. I assume there are mechanical differences, but
I think they're cosmetic. If there are differences, I also could not detect them.
I mean, you want to bet on it? Because we can't look it up now, but we can look it up. We can look it up after. The people in the after show will know who wins.
That's right.
I think that there has to be mechanical differences. There just has to be. Man.
So when you say mechanical differences, do you mean like top speed, braking power? Okay, because I would agree that it is possible that the cosmetic difference may also change like the hitbox of the car.
Sure,
but I don't count that.
No, I'm saying, like you said, higher top speed, turns faster, whatever.
Okay. In the interest of continually making terrible bets against you, I will bet that there are 0 mechanical differences between, even though I don't think I actually believe this, but I will bet I will be on the side of 0 mechanical differences between the 4 drivers.
Okay. And I will bet that there is at least 1 mechanical difference.
Yes. Yeah.
It would just be far, far easier. Like you got to give you like 5-1 odds or something. It's like, I am betting that there is nothing. I am betting that there is something.
Even 5-1 feels kind of, but yes, I will go on the side of purely cosmetic.
Okay. So yeah, but anyways, the moral of the story is, whichever way it is, if I am, quote unquote correct, right? They don't tell you any of this, right? They don't in any way say, oh, hey, this, and if there are no mechanical differences, then that feels like kind of a lost opportunity, because I can't believe it'd be completely game breaking to make, Mario Kart style stuff where it's just like, oh, this person, has a lower top speed, but can accelerate faster. This person has a higher top speed, but it's harder to get to. So this person's better for, old hats of the game. This one's better for new people, whatever, that feels like kind of a slam dunk, and that they, if that's true, then they should have telegraphed it,
Yeah. And I think I think there's a weird like mixed incentive here because remember, originally an arcade game, like you benefit in this kind of unquantifiable way from not telegraphing that because now you've given two players something to talk about, right? When I play, I always play this driver. When you play, you always play that driver. And I've seen you do this thing that I just can't make work. And it turns out it's slightly easier with the driver you drive as, but you don't know that. And I don't know that, right? So now, like, kind of, I think you and I were talking a different time about how there's so much Marvel crap right now that if you are into Marvel stuff, it like saturates your entire entertainment, like mental capacity. And, you know, MMOs do that same kind of thing. But you can imagine an arcade game trying to suck the oxygen out of the arcade, right? You want people waiting, you want them playing your game, waiting their turn to play your game, or talking about that time they played your game, right? Like you want to be the talk of the arcade. So you're probably right. Like there probably is some mechanical difference between them, but you know, I had to come down on the other side for reasons.
Yeah, because otherwise it's not fun.
Yeah, but I do agree with you. It is, as far as I can tell, in no way communicated in game. Like there's short of taking your own measurements of saying like, oh, did this person brake better or accelerate better or have a higher top speed? Like there's no UI for it.
There's no UI for it. And also too is if there are differences, they'd be somewhat, from what I can tell, somewhat subtle. And there's no, again, my gut check, like from what I saw when I was playing, there's no great visual affordance for it either, which is to say that not only say like, is there no, you know, bars that say what it is, but for example, if you are looking at an MMO, right, and they give you no information about it, but you see one person who's 7 foot tall, 350 pounds, clad in full plate mail with a sword and shield, and the other one who's a lithe wizard with long flowy robes, you know, like it's and you said like, okay, which one of these two is the spellcaster? You know, you'd say the second one. And if the second one was the tank, then that's bad game design, you know?
Now I have other questions. Well, I mean, this game, you know, we talked about the HUD. You have your score, which is the taxi fare counter, right? Like it looks like an old fashioned like ticking up counter. You have the gear that you're in, and you have how much time you have remaining. That's it. It's a driving game. No speedometer, because the assumption is you're always going as fast as you possibly can be, right? Yeah. So
maximum.
Yeah, so if there is a difference in top speeds, you know, cars usually have a way to communicate that specific piece of information to the driver that this game specifically leaves out.
Yes, absolutely. But also too is that you know, if for example one of the drivers was driving kind of like a sporty taxi when the other one is driving, you know, an old, you know, Chevy taxi, like, you know, a 1970s big muscle car taxi.
What? And this is what has made me concerned that you're probably right. Is there's a white guy, a black guy, a white girl, and an older white guy. So like 3 young people and then one old person. And the 3 young people drive different cars, but they're all like from roughly the same era. The older guy drives like an old fashioned, like a 1940s kind of, you know, rounded, like you'd know it if you saw it, like a Studebaker maybe. And I'm thinking like, I bet that one has the worst acceleration, but the higher top speed, like Bowser in Mario Kart, right? Like it's like, yeah, it's an old clunker, but once she gets going, you better watch out.
And that's the thing is that like all 4 vehicles do have different looks to them. But no, yeah, you're right. The last one does kind of have that. It looks like it comes out of Fallout 3, you know?
Yeah.
But none of them, you know, one of them's not, you know, a Hyundai Sonata, and the other one is, you know, like the old American muscle car, right? They all look close enough to where I was like, any of these could theoretically be the Bowser, you know? And especially like if the older man had a bit of a gut, but no, he looks pretty svelte, you know, like he looks like he keeps in good shape, you know?
Yeah. He hits Muscle Beach sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes. Like, and, you know, he's past his prime, but you know, he does okay. The last note that I have is so this game controller had an analog stick, which is good because 110% necessary. Fortunately, around this time, they were kind of finally like, hey, if you move in 3 dimensions, you need to be able to see all that. But but
and N64 style though, still just the one.
Still just the one, right? And as I was playing it, and I've realized that this has, the one analog stick, I was like, oh my God, am I going to have to listen to Lions for the next hour and a half, not shut the hell up about the dumbass camera and how he doesn't have enough control over it?
No, and you raise a fair criticism of apparently the only thing I'm known to care about.
Well, that and plinths, but that's a different thing.
Plinths and manners. You can't feel bad about the camera in this because the camera is always exactly where it needs to be, right? And I could imagine in a game that let you, because I think I just said this to you the other day, which is like I steer from the camera, right? Which is like in a game like Grand Theft Auto, I guarantee you I camera my way around turns. But in this, not only can you not do that, I don't know why the hell you'd ever bother. Like you corner at what would surely be forces that would rip your bones through your flesh, right?
Oh,
like
yeah.
You can take corners at maximum speed and, as you said, basically lose zero momentum.
It'll separate out His Highness from your denser fluids. Won't that also crush my bones? Oh, right, the bones. I always forget about the bones.
Yes, that, and also, do you remember the movie Tron?
I never saw Tron or Tron 3D Legacy, Ultra 3D Legacy.
Okay. Have you ever seen a parody of Tron where they always show the light cycle part and how they make
I'm culturally familiar with it.
Yes, they make instantaneous right angle turns because it's digital,
it's a video game,
right?
Yeah.
Well, and I mean they literally are in the computer, so like the physics are not happening. It is a representation of them, what they're doing. So this is pretty close to that. Like and if you know how to do the crazy drift, you can make even sharper turns. So it's pretty pointless to say like, oh, the camera's behind the car and I need to turn the camera the same way I would turn my head to look where the car's going, because by the time you think I would like to be facing that direction, you are. And so the camera is essentially always pointing exactly where you need to go. Now, I will say sometimes I've thought the camera was more angled down than I would have liked. Like I would either want like more headroom, so like a smaller car taking up less space, or for the camera to be a little lower so that I was looking more down the road. Sometimes I felt like there's a lot of road in my field of view, but that's honestly, it wasn't ever really I don't think it ever inhibited my ability to successfully deliver people to Pizza Hut. Like it wasn't my preference because I'm used to modern games where I have more control over the camera. But unlike Mario 64 and Banjo-Kazooie, where I was constantly like railing against the camera, here I was just like, oh, hey, you can't control the camera. Okay.
Right. And that was my takeaway too, was I was like, oh, you can't control the camera, but where else would the camera be?
Right.
It's directly behind you.
It is.
Yeah. It's directly behind you. Yes, to your point, right, is if you had a little bit more control, there may be a couple of different things you do, but mostly because of the breakneck speeds you're going at, you need it. If you were to try to steer with the camera, that would slightly limit how far ahead you can see. And you need to be seeing all the way ahead because things are coming at you at 1,000,000 miles an hour because there is no universal frame of reference. So I am standing still and these people are flying at me.
Well, I think you're making me realize, because I don't play a ton of driving games, and the ones I do tend to be silly, right? So Crazy Taxi, Mario Kart, right? Not Forza, right? Not Gran Turismo, which are like hyper realistic. But I actually think that even in those games, and I know for sure, like in Mario Kart, you actually can't control the camera, right? And I mean, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is on the Switch and there's a whole second analog stick and you totally could control the camera if you wanted to, but I don't think you can. And I don't think you can in modern driving games, like hyper realistic ones either.
Well, and also too, though, I think you're kind of proving the point, which is you don't think you can because you never tried. Because why would you? It's just occurring to you and to me now, where it's just like, I don't think you could do that. It's like, but you never tried, did you? It's like, to be fair, I did not. So because the camera's where it needs to be. What's
that parable about the door being locked? Like, if if you think the door is locked and so you never try to go through the door, it doesn't matter if the door is locked or not.
Schrodinger's door.
It's locked in your mind. So if you never even try the door, then being locked or not doesn't matter. What matters is that you think it's locked.
Dude, we could definitely go down a philosophical rabbit hole about all that stuff, because I literally have, and you know, Teddy's 7, right? You know, so I mean, he's a 7-year-old, but occasionally he'll say like, you know, well, you know, what is going on with thing A? And I was like, it doesn't matter, because it in no way concerns you, and thus therefore it can both be and not be, but all of those possibilities will never collapse into a single reality because you will never observe it. But he's like, but is it or is it not? I'm like, but all of existence. It's like, dude, just don't worry about it. Is eventually what it comes down to. But it's just like, yeah, you know, it's just is the door locked or is it unlocked? And it's like, well, you're not supposed to go in there, so it kind of doesn't matter, does it? But anyways, yeah. So that was my last big note, which was the camera is where it needs to be, and I thought you would be happy.
I was, apparently, and didn't even realize it. But I think I'm also ready to wrap up. So I will, kind of to my own surprise, say no nostalgia goggles required. Like, this game's silly, it's fun. I think you need to know going into this how much you want to get out of it, because if you have easy access to this game, or, you know, a port of it, because this game is ported all over Creation. So like, we played the Dreamcast one because I was like, we've never played a Dreamcast game, but I mean, this game's all over the goddamn place. You know, if it costs you $10 to get a hold of this and you're going to put an hour into it, I would say like, yeah, you will have a fun hour, and there are way stupider ways you can spend $10. But if you don't like silly games, if you don't like score chasers, that's all there is, right? There's the silliness and there's the score chasing. And if you're not going to enjoy either of those things, there isn't a secret story mode, right? There's nothing really else to do. So
that'd be amazing.
Right. Yeah. There's like this, I mean, at that point now you have Grand Theft Auto. Like, bad driving with an emotional story is Grand Theft Auto. But I don't think that that's a bad thing, right? This is an arcade game and an arcade port that is really clear about what it is and executes on it in this really fun, like dippable, snackable way that not every arcade port we have played succeeds at, right? A lot of them, once you take away the quarters, they break in Rampage like ways where they just fall
Honestly,
down.
I think this one's second only to Golden Axe in that regard.
Yikes. Yeah, like personally, I would say no nostalgia goggles required. Like, I would even go so far as to give it a recommend. Like, yeah, seek it out. It's fun to throw a little bit of time, or a lot of time, if you like score chasers.
Absolutely. No, I agreed. I would also give it a no nostalgia goggles required, because it and to your point, right, is that I would say that either A, if you like score chasing, then by all means, this game does it well, and spend hours trying to figure out all of the special combo moves in order to get that high score. If you're not, then it's still fun. It's still worth, you know, half an hour, a couple hours, you know. Definitely would recommend that you'll get way more out of it if you and a friend split that $10. You both go into it for $5, and then just spend, you know, an hour kind of giggling and going like, whoa. And also too, I don't know if this counts as like nostalgia, but you know, the minute that the game boots up, you're like, oh, yes, the 90s, you know? So I don't think you had to have lived in the 90s to enjoy it, but it hits you like a slap in the face, you know? But yeah, I mean, honestly, if anybody asked me, I'd say this game's crazy good.
The curtain falls, the music plays, the credits roll, then it all fades to black, and you're left by yourself. The fanfare is gone. There's no player 2 there by your side to share victories won. But as you slowly progress down the hall to your bed, a few great events leak back into your head from the time that you spent traversing the land, battling evil, fighting the darkness, just sword in hand. Your memories creep in with the edge of a smile.